Hello, today I wanted to visit with you about a few diseases that we find commonly on many pines in Oklahoma. We get calls in the office all about these diseases, and so we wanted to visit with you a little bit about how you might control them. The first one is called Dothistroma needle blight, and it's actually a fungal disease that gets on the needles or leaves of the pine tree and can cause them to die. Oftentimes it's not detrimental to the tree. It can make it look sad, but it could eventually, on a stressed tree, become serious enough that it could cause the plant to decline. This is typical of what it might look like. It starts out with banding, either tan or yellowing or brown spots on the leaf. It may have some yellow banding on it as well. And then eventually where that band develops, the tip of the needle will eventually die, leaving and it sometimes even break off. I think we have some here that look like they have had some dieback on them. Here we go. Half of this leaf is dead, and that could break off right there and leave a blunt tip of the needle there. So one of the ways, of course, that we can control any disease really is sanitation. So when you have leaves that develop like this on the tree, now obviously you can't pull them all off, but those needles that fall to the ground, you'd want to go ahead and rake those up, destroy them, remove them from the garden. You don't want to keep them around because that will harbor the disease and it will continue to infect the tree. Now, you can spray the needles with a fungicide, usually a copper-based fungicide, and that gives pretty good control. The best time to spray for Dothistroma needle blight is mid-May, would be your first application, and then you would follow up with another application in mid-June to early July. Another disease is called Diplodia Tip Blight, and this is actually very characteristic of the blight on the pine trees, is where the tip of the tree dies. And this is a disease, also a fungal disease, that attacks the new growth usually, so it develops on needles as they're beginning to emerge, and usually see the symptoms later on in the year. But this is also caused by a fungal disease, but it also can look like pine tip moth. Pine tip moth is an insect that will lay the larva, an egg on here, and the larva will attack the tip of the branch and cause it to die back. So you want to look closely to see if you can find any entrance holes of the larva that may have bored into it to make sure that it's not pine tip moth. I don't see any on this one, so it's very likely that this is the pine tip, the needle or the pine tip blight. And so again, sanitation is a good thing. You want to remove any infected parts. This tip here probably ought to be pruned back to live tissue. You want to do that when the plant isn't wet so that you don't continue to infect the tree. Now, another way to confirm that this is Diplodia Tip Blight is to look on the cones, and they may be still on the tree, or they may be laying on the ground around the tree. If you look really closely at these, they're speckled with little black spots that looks like it's been peppered, and that's very characteristic of the Diplodia Tip Blight. Those are the fungal bodies that develop on the pine cones. And those will sporulate, release spores, and those will again infect the tree. So remove the cones from the ground. Obviously you can't pick them off all of them off the tree, but if you can remove anything that's laying on the ground to get rid of them, then that will help reduce the amount of disease attack. So this one can also be controlled with a copper-based fungicide. Usually you will spray this one in the spring just as the needles are beginning to form, and then you will spray 2 more times at weekly intervals as the shoot begins to continue to grow and the needles break forth out of the sheath. Now, the last pine disease that still is a common problem is called the Pinewood Nematode or pine wilt. And this is actually a disease that's caused by, it's actually a combination of a longhorned wood borer that attacks the pine trees, and it's carrying a little tiny nematode that gets inside the tree. When they bore into it, it releases into the tree, gets into the vascular system basically in the tree, and plugs it up. And that will cause a tree to rapidly die. And you'll see a tree that looks fairly healthy, fairly green, and within a few weeks, a month or so, it'll go completely brown and die very quickly. And so if that happens, very good chance that you have pinewood nematodes. And you can check for that, send in some branch samples to make sure that that's what it is. But there is no spray or nothing that will control it once it gets the disease. So once you know that you've got pinewood nematode disease in the tree and it dies rapidly, the best thing to do is just actually cut the tree completely down and burn the wood so that you get rid of the nematodes and they can't be carried, from tree to tree. Pine wilt is really most common on pines that are not native to North America, such as Austrian pine, Japanese black and red pine, and Scotch pine. Those are the species that we generally see become attacked from the pine wilt nematode in Oklahoma. The native species in Oklahoma, as far as I know, have not had that problem with pine wilt. So if you're looking to maybe avoid that, then maybe try planting some native species. And again, keep the plants healthy. Usually they're stressed trees that get attacked. So if anything you can do to help the tree from becoming stressed, especially from drought, keep it well watered during the growing season, keep it fertilized, that will be helpful. For more information about the disease, you can get a copy of our fact sheet, Common Diseases of Conifers in Oklahoma, either online or at your county extension office.